Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hardwood Nation podcast with your boy CL Anthony and my main man Bryce Ward. What is going on, Bryce?
Same as always, just some work and trying to enjoy my weekend. Glad to be here as always.
Of course. So we are almost a month out from Media Day, which is really the official start of training camp. So we're almost there, churning through the slow period of the all season, but we're almost there. But something happened this week that piqued the interest of the NBA. Donovan Mitchell was finally traded, and it wasn't to the New York Knicks. It wasn't to the Miami Heat. It was to the Cleveland Cavaliers. What were your first thoughts on this trade? Were you shocked, or were you like saying finally it's over? What were your first initial thoughts?
I was thinking finally we have like some more conclusion because after the Rudy Gay trade, I wasn't sure if they were keeping Mitchell, what they were doing, and then I thought it would really only affect free agent signings and stuff. But I guess the Kevin Durant domino and situation falling into place kind of allowed the rest of the league to really make a decision. Like, I'm not sure if this affected the trade talks at all, but like just from like an outsider looking in, it felt like the Kevin Durant Brooklyn situation was kind of holding up the entire league. And I thought that
Hmm.
only affected like signings, but I guess it could have affected more.
Yeah.
Or it could have just been Danny Ainge being picky. Like, who knows? Um, but I'm just glad to finally see the situation unfold. And like Utah is looking good between both their trades now with a ton of picks, I guess, and some good young talent. Sexton's a nice piece to have. I think start out of something. You know, so but um, it seems like through rumors and hearsay that well, I get some people just straight up know that the Knicks offered certain things, and some people are just really annoyed that, especially Knicks fans, that it seems like there was a vendetta against them on the Utah side. I think I even saw somewhere where Danny Ainge was quoted by saying something like, "If the Knicks trade was going to happen, it was going to be so obvious that the Knicks got the short end of that deal, like it was going to embarrass them." And you can't really do that as an organization. So I'm excited it's over with. It makes the East even that much tougher, which I think we're going to get into later. But Cleveland surprised people last year, and I also think that they have a good chance, if healthy, to be a really consistently good team contending for probably like mid to high tier playoff spot. Like I said, if healthy. So it makes them way more exciting. If I was a Cleveland fan, I'd be excited. Utah, they're clearly going through a long rebuild that's just starting now. So um, that's one less team the West has to worry about. They'll drop off, someone will fill that spot. But overall, it's weird to see the dynamic of some of these people that are in charge of teams and player movement, and just like have some personal opinions in there affecting some of that. And so this was like kind of a very good example to see like how weird trade talks can go just based on relationships. So it's
Oh yeah.
very exciting to see. Glad to see it's finished for the players' sake, so everybody, the teams and the players can get on the same page and start moving forward. So, what do you think?
Utah has one more trade to make, and I'm going to get into that a little later before we transition into talking about Cleveland. But it just popped in my mind. Utah actually has one more trade to make, and I fully expect them to make it now. Um, Danny Ainge is a vengeful piece of shit. Okay, there's been back and forth between him and Pat Riley for years when discussing trades. Um, I know Mitchell had two teams in mind, of course, New York and Miami. Um, but Danny Ainge is a vengeful piece of shit. And what he did to New York for the duration of this off season was disgusting. It was just really disgusting. The rumor was, well, New York made it known that Mitchell wanted to come there, yada yada yada. That's not exactly how that went down. Um, The Knicks were extremely professional throughout this process, as far as I saw. Um, anytime Danny Ainge would make a counter offer, the Knicks would add more. I mean, the Knicks literally did everything right for this to happen. Mitchell just didn't get traded to New York because Danny Ainge is a piece of shit. And I I feel bad for Knicks fans because I don't think New York was the one leaking all this shit out. I believe it was Utah leaking all this shit out to make New York look desperate. So for once in my life, I'm actually on the Knicks fans because the final offer, and I don't remember all the details, but the final offer that New York made to Utah was a better offer than what Cleveland made. And that's when I was like, fuck this guy. Like, for basketball reasons, New York actually included RJ Barrett. They actually included a couple of more draft picks. What the fuck else do you want? It's just like, what else do you want? And then you get this Cleveland deal out of left field. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, he's fucking them. He's screwing them. No one can tell me that what they got from Cleveland, marketing, Sexton, who I like, but still, you could have had RJ Barrett and had him be the centerpiece of your rebuild, which is what New York's going to do now going forward because just signed this 4-year extension. It is vengeful. I feel sorry for Knicks fans that they had to deal with this for the duration of the offseason, and it's disgusting. And Danny Ainge should not be an executive in the NBA. And let's just be he wasn't a great NBA player. He was a bench player for most of his career, and this aura that he has about him that he's this great executive is false. What he does is he uses relationships that he's had throughout the league, which most people do, to be able to pull these trades off. He's going to help his friends out. His friends are going to help him. Is he a great executive? Absolutely not, because he shits on all these trade partners. Eventually, he's going to run out of trade partners. I don't think New York would be picking up the phone to discuss a trade with Utah anymore. And let's not forget, a few years ago, Pat Riley pretty much said "fuck you" and hung up the phone on them when they were discussing the trade. So I like the trade for Cleveland. Don't get me wrong. I like Donovan Mitchell, one, being in the East, and two, Cleveland has been on the rise for the last 2 years. Their culture has changed. They've upped their wins for the last 2 years. But dealing with Danny Ainge and seeing how he did the Knicks this offseason and jerked them off, I'm done. I'm absolutely done with that guy. I can't believe it. And just to segue into this trade, they have to do right by Mike Conley. If they're going through a full rebuild, they have to get him out of there. They have to get him to a contender. They have to do it by the trade deadline. I wouldn't wait that long, and I'm not saying there's anything personal with him in Utah. I wouldn't wait that long if I'm Utah. I'm getting him out of there right now. You want draft picks? Get you a fucking draft pick. I don't care. He needs to go to a contender. Find one. Maybe Dallas, being a backup to Luka because they just lost Jalen Brunson. Somewhere.
Yeah.
But Mike Conley, at this stage of his career, doesn't deserve to be in a rebuilding situation. So send him back to Memphis. Maybe he can back up Ja. Who knows? But he has to be on the contender. He deserves that. He's been a great guy for the duration of his career. That's the final trade. Since Utah is going full rebuild mode, that's the final trade that I believe they have to make. Where do you see, what situation do you see Mike Conley potentially falling in?
Well, they can't. I don't know. They probably can't afford it. And they just made a trade for someone else, so I doubt it. The Lakers could have used him.
Yeah.
That was the first thing off the top of my head. Maybe another team that's like on the cusp. Where you mentioned Memphis, maybe New Orleans. Trying to think of Toronto. Teams that are right there that could use some extra. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Maybe Philly to add some depth there behind Harden, because Harden's not going to be the same Harden. Any team that's contending, there's nothing bad to say about Conley. He helps any team immediately, with his veteran presence and his poise at point guard. I used to get him a lot in fantasy basketball because he was so solid year to year. I've liked him for a long time. So he can fit in anywhere, and he's a plus anywhere. The Heat, of course, could maybe use him.
We're
But I
already
mean,
old enough.
that's
I
like
love him,
the
but we're
same.
old
That's like
enough.
the same as Lowry. If you're gonna
Yeah,
have Conley, you just have Lowry. So it's the same thing basically.
young. We
Um,
need to go young. We need youth.
y'all aren't gonna get it until you wipe that team out.
We need youth, man.
You gotta hold on to like Bam and maybe one other guy or something. All right,
Bro.
but yeah, Conley could go anywhere. Where would you like to see him?
Memphis. Let's
Memphis.
send him back home. Send him back home to Memphis. He's one of the great guys in the NBA. Came from great stock. Just never been in any kind of trouble. Never heard of him being a bad teammate. Just a true professional. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
that's the final piece of the puzzle, and that's the piece no one's talking about. Like, and he could go. Okay, let's use Memphis as an example. You know, I love Memphis, but you also know I hate Memphis. You know, the trash talk and all this other shit. I think they need to act more professional, right? If you put Mike Conley back there, he can kind of calm those young guns down a little bit.
Yeah,
um,
which they might need. What about Lonzo Ball is still experiencing some pain in his knee. You think something like that Chicago could benefit from, or do they still already have too many people there who want the ball in their hands?
Chicago could be an option, but I think they're going to be fine because Zach LaVine can ball handle. You don't want DeRozan to be the ball handler so much, but Zach LaVine can ball handle. Um, Chicago's always tricky, right? Because they are
I hope
uber
Lonzo's okay,
talented.
by the way. Yeah, I'd like to see him back because he was playing well before he got hurt.
Yeah, he's going to miss the start of the season. So, um, but I don't want Conley would go there and be the starter, and I don't want him to be in the situation. He needs to coast to the end, like just coast. Come off the bench, play your
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes max. You know, do your load management because in Chicago it might be too much pressure. In Memphis, it won't be
Yeah,
unless Ja goes down again. But the Memphis, he's surrounded by a bunch of young guns, and those kids are just full of energy and I think that's the perfect spot for him where he could play like a Udonis Haslam role, um, like he does for Miami. So that's where I see Conley
mhm.
goes. But yeah, we're giving Mike Conley his flowers because he deserves it. And
He does. He does.
he hasn't mentioned anything about retirement yet, but we know he's at the end of the rope. So we're giving him his flowers. So we spoke offline about the trade, of course, and how the East is going to look. And I offered up my prediction. I said, I believe now Cleveland is going to be in the top four in the Eastern Conference. I heard some people say, "Oh, top three." Maybe I'm going to I'm going to be generous and say top four, and I remove Miami from the top four. How dangerous do you think, if healthy, Cleveland can be?
Um, I definitely, and this is assuming everyone's healthy. To me, there's an elite three right now in the East, and it's Boston. You gotta go with them because they're defending Eastern champs, and they're still young, and they're gonna be a problem for quite a few more years if they stay intact. If they don't trade away Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart right now. So I think it goes Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly. Those are my big three in the East. And I was like you. I had the Heat right there at number 4 behind them. Those three. But now I think Cleveland gives them some problems. I think Chicago this year is right there to give them some problems. Um, there's some teams that were like low in last year that seem to maybe take a step forward just out of pure progression, or they got better through the trade. So I think there's a good chance Toronto may be a little bit better. Um, Atlanta could be a little bit better. We saw them kind of like reach their potential last year. It's like, so they went out and they got um, DeJounte Murray. So the East 1 through like 6. I think is going to be a real dogfight, real tough. It's going to be hard to pick the exact position of some of these teams. It might come down to who's healthiest, who goes through winning streaks at the right times, these kind of things. If the team dynamic holds up, I mean, it's easy to forget, but Boston was dead in the water last year
Yeah,
through
yeah,
the first few months or half the season or so, and
pretty
then they
much
just turned it
absolutely
on. Yeah,
right.
so you just never know. But if I had to guess, I think those are going to be the top teams in the East, like 1 through 6, jockeying for position, and then filling up the end. You're going to have also the wild card. Two to me is the Brooklyn Nets because I mean, what has really changed? Like, can Kyrie now play home games? Is that
Yes,
going to be right? Okay.
yeah,
So they're going to be different. If the attitude is different, you got to say that they're probably up there somewhere. Ben Simmons is still a question mark with that team, so it's hard to place them. Like I said, I think they're like the ones that could go the highest or the lowest in my eyes. They have the potential to be up there. So at the end, you're going to have Charlotte flirting around with a spot. You're going to have New York seemingly flirting around with one of the last playoff spots because it seems like they took us a step forward during this offseason. Even though they didn't get Mitchell, they did make a few moves. I think they're going to be right there. Uh, it's going to be a real dogfight in the East. I have no idea where some of these teams are going to land because there's a lot of teams that are going to be extremely competitive. Um, it's going to fall, I think, because of the competition of the East. My expectations for the Magic, which I wish could be higher, I think they take steps forward too. But in terms of overall competition, the East is doing the same thing. So I'd like to see them get into the playoff tournament or playoff or play-in tournament. I'm sorry, but
mhm,
I think they're going to fall just short of that. Even though they're going to do much better, it's just the competition is going to be very tough in the East. Those top 6 spots, 7 spots, it could kind of go a lot of different ways. But
yeah.
my top 3, I think, are pretty solid, despite unless there's an injury.
You forgot to mention my little cousin in Charlotte. How dare you disrespect the one-time Rookie of the Year? How dare you? Like Charlotte's not gonna do anything. Like, are you serious?
I
Are you serious?
mentioned them.
I don't remember you mentioned
I
that. Forgive
mentioned
me.
them getting into the play-in. That's about it.
Oh, yeah, forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me. Lamelo's gonna be in the top six.
Calm down. They lost Bridges.
They didn't lose him. Technically, he's still on the team. Technically, he
Yeah,
just didn't get he just didn't get the contract that he thought he was going to get. So they're waiting for his legal issues to be sorted out. So he wasn't an unrestricted free agent. He's a restricted free agent. So he's going to be there for another year at least. Now, does he play? I have no idea. But he has some legal issues that he needs to take care of. But if he doesn't play, that actually frees up more minutes for PJ Washington, who's on a bigger contract than Bridges anyway. So they're similar. Bridges was a little more advanced, but now maybe PJ Washington can grow a little bit. So, but
I
yeah,
just don't
those
see a
young,
reason to give them like a huge bump, and they have a new coach to learn to play for.
yeah, yeah,
So
those
I'm just
youngins
not
need to get
sure
it
if they
together.
go up or down. Sorry.
Look, your boy Clifford might run him into the ground.
Some of them might need that though. Like you just don't know how people are gonna respond.
Yeah,
It's like
Clifford might.
Thibodeau. Like you better be ready to go play for
Yeah,
Thibodeau. Like
yeah. It would not surprise me, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, but it would surprise me if Lamelo gets injured doing this season because he just wore down.
mhm,
Because Clifford doesn't play. One team I'm very curious about, and it's kind of similar to Charlotte, is Atlanta because
mhm.
Nate McMillan historically has been a defensive coach. He was a great defensive player in the NBA. They need to open up the offense just a little more and be more creative and let DeJounte Murray and Trey Young play off of each other. Now they have a little relationship. They belong to the same agency, so they're pumped for being able to play together. Um, but I just think now it's on to the coaching staff to actually open up the offense a little bit and let those two guys create. So hopefully we get that. Because outside of Damian Lillard 10 years ago, Nate McMillan has never had the potential firepower that he has right now. So,
Mhm.
hopefully he can loosen up the reins a little bit and let those guys free flow. Because that could be a spectacular backcourt. Just like with Cleveland, with Mitchell and Garland, they can both play the 1 and 2 positions. They are a smaller backcourt, but that front line that Cleveland has is absolutely amazing and is absolutely young. Like that whole team Cleveland has young, from the head coach on down. I will be watching more Cavs games. I I,
Mhm.
I had said I was going to watch more Magic games this year, but
Well, it's a good
but
problem to have. You're just overall
yeah,
excited about these younger
yeah,
teams. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I
a
am.
good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only
My
watch the old Heat so many times and watch them miss out
man,
on the championship so many times.
look, look, look. I am a Heat lifer,
Hmm.
but sometimes I need a little more energy. I need a little more energy on the court. Um, so we had a revelation this week, and one of our favorite players that we haven't seen in a while, through injury, through bullshit, whatever. John Wall could have played last year, but the team Houston decided to shut him down. But he's been one of our favorite players throughout the years. And also, what we've seen more so the last few years were players like DeMar DeRozan, players like Paul George speaking out for mental health, and even Kevin Love. I'm like, I know there's another one, Kevin Love too. And John Wall shared a small story this week about dealing with the injuries, dealing with the loss of loved ones. How he thought about suicide and had suicidal thoughts. So I'm a proponent for mental health awareness. I've gone to therapy multiple times. Um, how how does your perception of John Wall change with him being so open? Because with me, when I look at him now, I'm like, to me, he was already a great young man, but now just like pushed him up into the stratosphere. Because we know players, we know players, we see them on the court, but we don't really know players and don't know some of the struggles that they go through. Because to us, they're superheroes and they're flawless. Um, but I've always respected the young man, but now I have so much more respect for him because he was able to come out and be open and honest about this. Because a lot of people won't do that. So how do you feel about it?
I was glad to hear him come out and say it. In terms of being surprised, look, I've been a John Wall fan since he was playing at Kentucky.
Doing the Dougie.
Yeah, and um, I'm telling you, like, I was a big fan of his and DeMarcus Cousins, and they played
Mm,
together and they came into the league together. I always loved, from guys like Derrick Rose to John Wall. I loved these style guards that just like, it was like nothing could stop them. John Wall came into the league and his style of play, I just everything about him, I've liked since the day I saw him. Everything about him, I liked his spirit. He come out, he was a clear leader, and he had the talent to lead. And he by all respects came out and was a very um, open person. Like I followed him on social media, I think the whole time,
mhm.
and to me, he's always come off as a very genuine person. Um, um, he was like one of my favorite players for a long time, and the same with DeMarcus Cousins for the same reasons. It seemed like he was getting a bad rap almost because Cousins was so open. Like he's so just like what you see is what you get, and it gets him in
Right,
trouble because he could be emotional at times.
right,
John
right.
Wall seemed to have the same, like same genuine attitude, but handled things differently, obviously. And to just hear him come out and talk about it, that part doesn't surprise me as much as just hearing the details of it because we do all go through things. It's like it's easy to knock Ben Simmons as well, but we don't truly know his life. We don't truly know every little detail he's going through. So it's easy for us to knock people for one thing or another, but the 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 recent outcry for actual attention towards depression and anxiety, and how these affect people, and these athletes are just people too. To see how it affects everyone, including them who seem to be on top of the world, right? And they come out, you
Right.
know, he lost grandmother, a mother, sick, injury for year after year, keeping him out of the only thing that's probably ever brought him joy his whole life, the game he plays, the game that he loves to play, he's given his whole life for. Then you have all these outside circumstances. So it seems like literally your whole world is crashing down. You're losing
Mhm.
the people who have loved you most your whole life. You've lost the game. It makes sense. It's very humanizing to feel those thoughts, because I think a lot of us have felt those thoughts. So it's nice to see someone like him, you know, that you can relate to, that you can get, strength from. You can hear their testimony and how they dealt with it. It's nice. In terms of who he is as a person, this situation doesn't surprise me. I'm just glad that he was able to come out and talk about it, because that's probably good for him as well. It was just a nice, like, it was nice to see in general. I guess the way he was just able to come out and talk about it. It's like, maybe other people's situations would look better on them if they could come out with the kind of detail and the kind of, I'm trying to think of the word is, like, just putting your stuff out there for the world to judge. It's scary, but people come down real hard on Ben Simmons. Like I said, maybe if everybody knew everything, maybe if he just came out and addressed it instead of little behind the scenes situations, and you're hearing from one source or another about the situation. What John Wall did was just come out and talk about it and handle it, and
Right.
let
Right.
people know, and I think that's respectable. So, kudos to him. Hope he's doing well all the time. He's spectacular when
He
he's
is.
healthy and his mind's right, and so I hope he can get back to doing what he loves.
Yeah. He's a great young man, and now he's in the best professional situation he could be in because he is on a low key contender for really the first time in his career.
If
And
healthy, they're a
also,
contender.
yeah, and also for the first time in his career, he's in this position where he's not the guy. So he can defer. And I think that's the best position for him to be in again at this stage of the career. So, like for example, we talked about Mike Conley earlier. Like if the Clippers didn't have John Wall, Mike Conley to the Clippers, right? It's just
Or if they didn't have who's the other guy? Who's their main guard? Their point guard.
Reggie Jackson's the starter. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So like one or the other. If they didn't have one or the other, you can use them.
Yeah, he's their starter. So before we head out of here today, I do want to update a couple of stories that we talked about last week. Of course, when we had Kevin Carter of the Balls in Our Court podcast on. Thank you
Shout
so
out to
much for that.
Kevin.
So a couple of things. One, I do want to talk about this Giannis thing again, just a little bit because me and you watch various other podcasts, and Chris Richard and Rob Parker brought up a great point this week after we recorded ours. I saw one of their videos, and they brought up a great point about they added another reason to why Giannis could be disrespected so much, and it's something I didn't think of, so I want to address it now. That he wasn't U.S. grown, he didn't come up through the AAU circuits like our guys do, and that could be another reason why our guys don't really respect him. How do you feel about that point of view?
Hmm. Well, it's like, so will they only? It seems weird that the players would only respect technical skill as well, though, because so many AAU guys come up where it's your athleticism and it's your size that gets you through so many years without the technical side. So I don't understand the knock on Giannis and where he comes from when you're not knocking Luca and the other foreign players for where they come from. It's like Luca, you could knock him all day for his conditioning and the way he preps for a season, but you're not going to say that he doesn't know the technical side of how to score the ball, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it just seems weird. Like, they're if that's the case, then they're just picking and choosing. It just seems childish, I guess. Like, you're picking at something when you're trying to find a problem with it or something like that, instead of just giving the guy his respect. Um, for what, this is what's weird. If Giannis hadn't accomplished anything, I get it. I get it. But what more do you want him to accomplish on a
Right.
team that doesn't have a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant or Stephen Curry? His best next player is why am I blanking? I just Chris
Chris
Middleton.
Middleton.
Chris Middleton. Talk about him all the time. That's their next best player, and I'm not saying he's not great. Okay, but he has won with less, and
Yeah.
he has put the team on his shoulders in ways that other players have not. I don't care where he came from. He could have started playing basketball 5 years ago. That's impressive. Then his progress is impressive. His mentality is impressive. If anybody knocks on him at this point, I think they're just jealous or they're trying to get views or clicks.
Mhm.
They're jealous of what he had. They're jealous they can't be that tall and that athletic. Then that's not something you can fight or you can grow. Like Gilbert Arenas can't figure out how to be taller. So he had to do things his way, which fell apart magnificently around him.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't even want to hear Gilbert Arenas ever speak on it because why would I care? Why would I care what he says? I want to hear what LeBron James would have to say about it, maybe. And I still wouldn't care if he knocked him because Giannis has proven everybody wrong.
Yeah.
Winning proves everybody wrong. And Giannis has won at every level, like fucking every award you can win.
Mhm.
So I don't want to hear it. Like I think that's just people being petty and trying to find a reason. It's like
Yeah.
in Francis Ngannou in the UFC, like what he came from, like as a child to be here. It's like he hasn't been fighting nearly as long as everyone, but he's huge, and when he hits you, you go out. It's no different. Like technically, he's not as good as everyone, but he's bigger
Mhm.
and stronger, and he has the right mindset. Who's to say he's not the best just because of those reasons? Like you're finding a reason to pick on the guy, but the guy is winning on every level. And Giannis is one
Right.
of them. So I don't
Right.
want to hear guys like Gilbert Arenas who haven't won anything talk about it like that because it's gross.
It is, and the way I respect Giannis. Of course, he flirted with my team a couple of years ago and decided to stay in Milwaukee and went through us to win the championship. So that was fine. He does it his way because he hears the noise just like we hear the noise, and he doesn't give a fuck. He does his own thing, and that's what I can respect about him because, and that could be a benefit from him not being quote unquote homegrown. That he doesn't listen to all the negativity and shit that some of our homegrown players may. So that I
Or
have
he hears
huge
it and he uses it as motivation. He doesn't jump
he
back on
could.
Twitter to argue with Charles Barkley. I think I
Yeah.
think I just told you who I was thinking of. So yeah, I agree with you though. I think it's a good thing
uh,
on Giannis.
you taking low key shots at Kevin Durant.
Every chance I get.
Our second update, because this happened in real time when we were recording last week, was the injury to Danilo Gallinari, one of my low key favorite players. So it turned out to be worse than we thought. It is a full ACL tear, so he's going to miss he's going to miss all the upcoming season. And he's 34 years old. This is a blow to the Boston Celtics because they did add who I think is one of the best point guards in the league, Malcolm Brogdon, but then they also brought Gallinari in to solidify their bench, which was a little weak. So now with Gallinari out of the picture, there's rumors, there's a rumbling that maybe the Celtics will look at Carmelo Anthony. So one, how do you think this injury affects Gallinari? Do you think he comes back, or do you think he just quietly retires? And two, do you think Carmelo Anthony would be a good fit for the Boston Celtics?
Um, I'm not as familiar with Gallinari, like in terms of like how he deals with things as much. I know he's been in the league a long time. Um, so I can't speak on whether or not he calls it quits or not. You just don't know. Um, I do think it might be a good idea to bring in a Carmelo Anthony if you can, if he wants to play there,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like he had more basketball to be played as well. I know he was out of the league. Like it was really weird what happened to him. So like I said, I can't speak on that either to see how he feels. But if he feels like there's something left to be given, and there's a contender that can use him, and I'm all for it. I'm a fan of Carmelo, so it it also gives hope to like other players, who are
Mhm.
trying to do the same thing. These injuries happen every year. Gallinari might not be ready to retire, but nonetheless, he has a spot that has to be filled. And there's a lot of guys who are probably at the either end of the line that can play some of these minutes. So I'm all for Carmelo if he can get back in there and they want him fitting in with a team, a real contender like Boston, because they're going to need him for those long playoff stretches, and especially for like our age. We grew up with Carmelo. We saw so much of him. I don't think there's a lot of people that are really going to hate on him, except maybe old Denver fans that are like still burned for some reason. But I got nothing bad to say about Carmelo. I like to see him in the league whenever possible. It was a shame that him and LeBron were a little too old to get anything really substantial going together. Um, but yeah, I mean, the longer he stays in the league and is actually valuable, the better it is for everybody. I think, because it kind of changes things for some of these older players. Like 20 years ago, you couldn't be in the league this long. That it just wasn't there. Their bodies didn't hold up the same way. So I think it's
Right.
just a testament to like their career and like how they've done things, taking care of themselves. If he's talented enough to be there, he deserves to be there. So nothing bad to say about Carmelo.
Yeah, I think with Gallinari, because he averaged damn near 12 points a game off the bench for Atlanta last year. Um, he had size. He's a good shooter.
Mm-hmm.
When you have these injuries younger, you tend to bounce back quicker for them. But when you have them when you're older, it's a
Tough.
little harder. Your body may not respond as well. Like when Kobe ripped his Achilles, we knew he was done. So he came
Yeah.
back and he gave him that other year for his farewell tour. But at that stage in his career, it was a wrap. Um, so Gallinari has been a decent NBA player, and like you said, he's been around for a long time. Bounced around as he got older, but
Mm-hmm.
he would have been a perfect fit for what Boston needed off that bench. And so it sucks that. And don't get me wrong, he was playing for his country for the qualifiers, so I get it. But it's a huge blow to the Celtics because their one weak spot was their bench. Um, Carmelo Anthony, believe it or not, there's rumors of him returning to New York. There's rumors of him returning to Denver, and there's rumors of him returning, well, not returning, but going to Boston. So I'm not sure which route he's going to take. I mean, it's going to be in a limited bench role, of course, because he's at the end too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, I stay away from saying that players deserve to win a championship. I stay away from people like, oh, this guy deserves. He's been in the league 20 years, i.e., Chris Paul. What I
Mm-hmm.
will say is it would be nice if Melo was to win one because from his draft class, LeBron got one. Darko Milicic got one. He's been out the league. Of course, Wade got one. So he's one of the prominent guys from his draft class that doesn't have a championship, that has never even played in the NBA Finals. So, I would like to see it happen. If I was hoping it could happen last year before that shit show fell apart.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if he could get to Boston, they would present his best shot to at least get to the NBA Finals. And I'm not saying Boston's going to come out of the East because I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee's to lose. Um, but he would at least have his best shot with Boston. Fuck the sentimental shit with Denver and fuck the sentimental shit with New York. Don't get me wrong, Denver's good too. Don't get me wrong, Denver's good if those youngins come back healthy. But Boston just presents an opportunity for him. And now with Gallinari going down for the year, I think it'll be a perfect fit for Melo. It's insane, right? Because but this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like my second generation, but I think this is your first generation seeing people coming in and then kind of transitioning out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thing. It's a really weird thing. As we get older, we see it. So like for example, I know you're a Dwight Howard fan. You're going to see him transition out soon. You saw him come in. You're going to see him leave soon. Where would you like to see? Would you like to see the reunion? There's rumblings. There are rumblings between Dwight and the Magic. Would you like to see that reunion?
No, thank you. Um, I will say this too. I started really watching basketball again when the Magic were finally getting good again. And I know that sounds
Mm,
like, if anything, bandwagony, but I've always been a Magic fan, and I've come and gone with all of the sports. I've watched every sport at some point, even soccer. Um, Basketball is one of the only ones I've actually come back to and watched a lot of. And the Magic were always my team. So I came back and started watching it when they got good. It was like same time, but even at that time, I was very much bored with the style. Um, Dwight Howard has always been fun to watch on the defensive end for me. Like,
mm,
you see some highlights, that's nice. Um, but he was no Shaq. He was not that exciting to watch. In the style of play with some of our other players, Rashard Lewis, Turkoglu, um, even to a point, Jameer Nelson for some, that they could be exciting for some, but their general style of play, pass it into Dwight, pass it back out, that wasn't exciting to me. Dwight wasn't as exciting on the offensive end. I liked Dwight Howard for the sake of he was on my team and that he was great at what he did, but he was never one
mm.
of my favorite players. I never wanted the Dwight Howard jersey while he was there. I wanted the Lewis jersey,
Mm.
actually. Um,
Wow.
so I just don't really so much mind not having him back. I'm sure some people would like to, but not for me. No, no, I'm good.
Cortez,
He can go
look,
retire in Atlanta in his hometown.
look, Cortez is going to kick you out of the Magic Nation for that one.
At
Even
least
though
I'm
you
being
shouted
honest.
out Jameer. You shouted out Jameer, so that's
I
what
know I
Cortez
saved
does.
myself a little bit. I mentioned Junior. I did that on purpose.
I'll say this. You guys have plenty of bigs right now. I think if you didn't have so many bigs, I would be okay with him coming back to Orlando because let's just be honest. Dwight Howard has had a decent NBA career, but he's been in the shit since he left Orlando. Let's
Yeah,
just be real. In his short time in Orlando, I believe it was 6 or 7 years, um, he was one of the most impactful players in the history of that franchise. Now, was he offensively gifted? Absolutely not. He was always robotic with his move. He was just robotic. But for some crazy reason, he scared the shit out of other teams offensively to where they always double teamed him, which opened up Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu, Jameer Nelson, JJ Redick, who is Jesus in Orlando. So that's why you guys were able to have that 3 point barrage that you guys had because the White drew so much attention in the paint.
yeah, yeah.
Which is ridiculous to me because he wasn't a great offensive threat. It's so ridiculous that it happened. And I grew up watching the inside outside game. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Teams don't play that way anymore. Philly kind of they try it, but they just don't as great as Embiid is, they just don't because they can't never keep the shooters consistent. So, but Philly tries it. So
Hmm.
I actually love that style of basketball. I grew up on it, but it's just crazy to me that post Orlando, he's an afterthought, and I do believe will it save his career? No, he's on the way out. We know that. Will it save his peace of mind? Yes, because he seems to need that, and no place you know what they say is not always greener on the other side. No
Yeah.
team that he's played for has taken care of him like the Magic did because the Magic kept Dwight Howard. I'm not going to say kept him out of a lot of shit, but they kept the shit that was happening to him on the low.
I also
Cause
think it was bad timing with the back injury because a back injury with a
yeah,
big man is different. It's like a leg
yeah,
injury with a guard. You're probably not ever going to be the same.
yeah,
Like, unfortunately, that really seems to be the case with big men. So I
yeah,
think it was him leaving and the back injury that kind of like ruined his career.
yeah. But I'm sentimental with players coming back home, and
Hmm.
I mean we're right down the road, so we can see how that city embraced him and cherished him, and I think it would be great for him at the end to have that. But I just don't see how it works with this current roster. I don't.
I,
Um,
I mean, I say the same
yeah,
thing. Like
yeah.
we're this roster is meant for something else right now. We don't need to be worried about bringing back legends, I guess, right now. That's not what we need. You want to be sentimental about someone going back home. That's what you should appreciate the LeBron James Cleveland trip, as I know you do.
You know, you're the biggest piece of shit I have ever met because LeBron wasn't homegrown in Miami, of course. But
Hmm.
anyways, with that said, thank you guys for watching another episode of the Hardwood Nation podcast. Our platform is really growing. Bryce, I texted you one of the numbers the other day. I'm going to text you another number today because
Cool.
our last video started off slow on YouTube, but then it's picked up over the last couple of days. I'm like, wow, what's going on? So we are trending up. So please continue to like, subscribe, and share our content. Follow
Please.
us on Twitter at Hardwood Nation. Respond to us when we say stupid questions like who's greater, Dwayne Wade or James Harden. Drop comments on our YouTube videos. We respond most of the time. We respond.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.